I'm going to, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try it. Sophia and I did a dry run, but we are still having some technical issues.
And I apologize. I forgot we could have been playing the video while we were waiting. So
No, we're fine, Teresa.
Yeah.
I had to do one this morning for a board meeting. You want to hear it? If it's enough,
we are
we'll get it.
operating under the, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh, no, here we go.
Okay.
Got it. Give me a chance here.
It was attorney approved.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. And Caitlin, will you please conduct the roll call?
I'll be happy to. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to start at the top with Member Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Braxton.
Here.
Thank you. Member Burgess. And we knew she was not going to attend as she called ahead. Member Franklin. Okay, absent. Member Haskew.
Here.
Thank you. Member Howell.
Here.
Thank you. Member Hudson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Hirsch. Okay, absent. Member Kamara. Okay. Member Krieg. And I know Steve is sitting in for her, but not a voting member. Is that correct, Peter?
Correct.
Thank you. Member McCrary.
Here.
Thank you. Member Toth.
Here.
Thank you. Member Warren. Okay, absent. Member Xavier.
Here.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Geringer.
Here.
Thank you so much. And we, Chair Mitchoff, let us know ahead of time that she will not be here, but just for the record, I will call Chair Mitchoff. She is absent. So we have absent Burgess, Franklin, Hirsch, Kamara, Warren, and Mitchoff.
Okay,
I
thank
just want
you.
to, Madam Chair, I just want to point out with Nicole Howell here now, we do have a quorum.
Oh, thank you. That was my next question. So thank you very much. And so we will move on to agenda item number 2, which is the opportunity for public comment. Before I turn it over to members of the public who are present, Caitlin, have we received any written public comment ahead of time?
We have not. Thank you for checking.
Okay, so are there any members of the public who would like to speak during this public comment time for items not on the agenda? If so, please raise your real or virtual hand and we will call on you. And you will have a 3-minute time limit. And so really raising your virtual hand because I can't really see everybody. Oh no, wait, here we go. So Caitlin, do you see any members of the public who would like to speak?
I do not see any hands up at this time.
Okay, and if there is anyone, maybe turning off, unmuting yourself, but not seeing anyone, we will move on to the next item, which is our consent calendar. And so are there any comments from the committee on the item on the consent calendar?
I'm sorry, Teresa, I was taking an email at the same time. Do we have the quorum? Can we vote on this?
We do.
Okay, I'll move
yes.
it
Um,
before somebody leaves.
Yeah.
Nobody's leaving.
And Luella seconds.
Great, thank you. Are there any comments
me.
from members of the public? Okay, Caitlin, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
I'm happy to, and thank you for jumping on to make the motion, Member Hudson. So Member Anderson,
Yes.
thank you. Member Braxton,
Yes.
Member Burgess, Member Franklin, Member Haskew,
Yes.
thank you. Member Howell.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Hudson,
Yes,
thank you. Member Hirsch. Okay. I'm taking notes here. Member Kamara. Member Krieg. Member McCrary. Member McCrary.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Member Toth.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Warren. Okay. Member Xavier.
Aye.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. With
Great.
9 votes.
Thank you, Caitlin. So now we'll move on to our regular agenda items. And our first item on the agenda will be an action item, and it will be presented by Peter Engel. So I will turn it over to Peter Engel. I think I'll turn it over to Peter. Did I freeze? No, thank you.
No, you did not. Vice
Everybody
Chair.
got very, very quiet. And so for a moment, so Peter might be having.
Sorry, I thought I
Oh, no.
was. Sorry, I had my.
Was it a
notes up.
fabulous presentation?
I have my notes up in front of me and I didn't realize I was on mute. I apologize.
Thank you.
Um,
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is an action item for the task force, and it's to make a recommendation to the authority board to add additional funding to the Nelson Nygaard contract. When we first did the original amendment for the Nelson Nygaard contract to help with the implementation, we kind of guesstimated what the amount would be without really knowing what the whole scope of work and task force was going to be looking for. And so as it turns out, some additional work came forward for them as well, the Measure X funding request, which was a fairly significant amount of work to go through the committee structure set up at the county for that process. So we currently have enough funding in the contract to last through June, we believe. So we want to add some additional funds to that contract to get us through the end of the year. We've also been pretty aggressive with implementing some of the recommendations of the strategic plan, and specifically, putting together the coordinated entity and starting to work in pretty much in a lot of detail on the one-seat ride pilot. You're going to hear a lot more today about the low-income fare subsidy program. So these are just example of some of the work that Nelson's been putting a lot of time in to move these projects forward. What we'd like to do And in your agenda packet in the staff report, there's a table at the end that kind of summarizes what we're looking to do. There's still $31,300 existing in the contract. We did an estimate of, what it's going to take to kind of get us through the end of the year. We feel like the work that Nelson is doing specific to the Measure X funded implementation strategies can partially be funded using those Measure X dollars. We're also proposing to match at a 50-50 rate some Measure J dollars for that, plus cover all of the admin of helping with these meetings and being here for meetings, and the time taken to do that would be fully paid with the Measure J funds. None of the Measure X funds would be used for that. We're also just thinking in terms of if we need other support outside of the Nelson contract, we want to be able to, again, 50-50 between the Measure J and Measure X, have kind of that contingency of $20,000, $10,000 each. Of course, this would only be spent if needed. Staff does anticipate maybe some expertise when it comes to the coordinated entity and kind of the legal structures of that. So just trying to think ahead. We want to see if we want to have some contingency funds to be able to use for that. So we are looking for a request from the authority for $41,700 in Measure J and $37,000 in Measure X for a total of $78,700. $58,700 would go towards augmenting the Nelson Nygaard contract. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any questions from committee members? From voting members?
I'd take longer to move the recommendation.
Are there any members of the, Caitlin, did we receive any written public comment?
We did not, Vice Chair. Thank you for checking.
And are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? Please raise your hand and staff or I will call upon you. And Caitlin, do you see anyone? I do not.
No,
I do.
not.
I do now.
Thank you.
Debbie, go ahead. And this is not a public comment. Debbie's a committee member, so we can take the time clock down.
Oh, you're going to regret saying that.
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, but we do want to.
Your mouth, you were like, ah!
But we do want to encourage brevity. And no, go ahead, Debbie.
I can honestly say none of us were thinking it.
Yeah.
So I just I want to say thank you to Peter or the authority or whoever it was that also looked to Measure J funds. I want to express a historical frustration that a lot of money is being spent on autonomous vehicles that weren't called out in the expenditure plan, which I worked on and was a part of, and zero money, which was in the expenditure plan to be spent on accessible transportation, was going in that direction. And so I just want to appreciate the course correction and the recognition that there is money that should be spent from Measure J funds on accessible transportation, and that there's equity in the funding streams coming to this. So I just want to call that out and share appreciation for it. And insofar as how we need consultants to work on the work and that piece of it, we tend to, as nonprofit organizations, drive the work that we do. So hiring consultants is a luxury. It's something that we don't typically have the opportunity to do. And I hope that the future implementation of this and working with a consultant really do look to bring some successful practices we've seen happen outside of our circle implemented here without the constraint of the history of the JPAs and transit providers and all of that fun stuff that this, I'm hoping, consultant can bring fresh eyes to outside places and spaces and help us usher that into an environment that has historically been very status quo-esque. So I just wanted to sort of lift that sort of push up. I hope that makes some sense to folks. And just thanking CCTA again for recognizing the expenses coming from both places.
Thank you, Member Toth. Okay, so are there any other comments, public or committee? And if not, may I have a motion?
I'll move if you're ready for this one, Teresa. I'm going to do the whole thing more formal. And that is, I'll move that the task force approval for the ATSP task force to seek authorization for the authority board chair to execute amendment number 2 to agreement number 523 with Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates, Inc. in the amount of $31,700 in the additional Measure J funds and $27,000 additional Measure X funds for a new total agreement value of $498,700 for continued implementation of the ATSP and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. In addition, I'll move that staff seek approval on the additional 20,000, 10,000 Measure J funding and 10,000 Measure X fund for possible unidentified additional resources if necessary.
Second.
Thank
And if
you.
you ask me to repeat it, I know you were thinking it.
So we have a very thorough, for the record, formal motion by Member Hudson and a second by Task Force Member Xavier. Caitlin, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
I'll be happy to. We'll start with Member Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Braxton.
Yes.
Thank you. And Member Burgess. Member Franklin. Member Haskew.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Howell.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you, and we appreciate the motion. Member Hirsch. Thank you. Absent. Member Kamara. Okay. Member Krieg. Okay. Member McCreary.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Toth.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Warren. Okay. Member Xavier.
Aye.
Thank you. And finally, Vice Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great, thank you very much. So the next, and thank you, Peter, and thank you, Debbie, for acknowledging the work that went into that, and thank you to staff. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 4B, which will be informational items presented by staff. My understanding is that first we have Peter Engel updating us on the one-seat ride, and then followed by Naomi on the coordinated entity and John Cunningham on the one call, one click. So without further ado, Peter.
Great. Oh, I'm not on mute this time. I thought I'd better check. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just real quick on the one-seat ride. The Nelson Nygaard team and John Cunningham and myself met with all of the transit operators, kind of just to learn more about the one-seat ride pilot as it exists now and to discuss the steps required to set up a pilot project for expansion of the current one-seat ride program. East Bay Paratransit was part of that meeting, and so we anticipate that they will be involved as we move this into the next steps of the one-seat ride. So we're encouraged by that as well. David Kaufman from Nelson Nygaard and Richard Weiner, who you all know, met with Rashida Kamara from County Connection Link and Charlie Anderson from WestCat as a follow-up meeting. And David Kaufman has started putting together an analysis of potential options for expanding the program. And right now, kind of the one that seems to be rising to the top, and it's something that we've heard a lot from the public, specifically in West County, about is service, some type of one-seat ride service between West County and Central County, particularly to medical facilities in Martinez and the surroundings. So that's just a real quick update of where we're at with the one-seat ride project. We do anticipate over the next 2 to 3 months solidifying some recommendations for the task force, so we can get a program up and running. So I think John is next.
I think I am. I don't
Oh,
know.
I'm sorry, you're right. Naomi, you're next. My
I don't know
apologies.
if we wanted to pause to see if there are any questions on your update.
And I was going to, do we want to do questions in between each one? So,
No, well, maybe it's better to do them at the end. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the coordinated entity, the working group met on March 16th to go over case studies and discussion items for the coordinated entity. It was a robust meeting with a lot of opinion and questions and a lot of things to follow up on. We are continuing to do research on those items that were raised and intend to meet again with that group, hopefully in late May, and hopefully have a list of items or qualities or factors that we would like to see from our coordinated entity or eventual coordinated entity, which will give us a better ability to determine the course that we want to take to get there. So that is my update on the coordinated entity at this time.
thank you. And now we will move to John.
Thank you, Vice Chair Geringer. Yeah, I'll give an update on where we're at with a one call, one click system that was recommended in the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. For those of you who aren't aware, which is probably very few people on this call right now, the one call, one click is a single place where people can go to get information about accessible transportation. It's called different things in different places. Single point of entry, no wrong door. It's a person-centered arrangement rather than sort of an agency-focused approach. You get the idea, one call, one click, one phone number and one website to go countywide. Right now, that's not, of course, the case because we have city programs, we have different transit operators, that sort of thing. So again, it was a recommendation in the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. And so and it was also a recommendation for Measure X funding, one of the quote unquote quick wins that we are looking at. So such a system, the functionality of such a system exists on a continuum at sort of the very basic level. It acts as an information referral, just information. People will go one place and then they would be redirected to the most appropriate resource, depending on what city they live in, what transit district they're in, that sort of thing. The other end of the spectrum on that functionality or sophistication, you could have it where you could go to one place in the county and book a trip, for instance. So along that continuum we don't know where we're going to land quite yet, but we do know that implementing it in Contra Costa County, we're going to start at sort of the very basic level, which would basically be an information and referral type of service. And how far we get along that continuum is going to take time to look at. And that's something that the team is looking at right now. However, I have a bit of a more detailed update at the Richmond Senior Services Commission. I think a couple of weeks ago, Tom Tamara, who is the executive director of the Contra Costa Crisis Center, gave a brief presentation regarding a 211 ride system that his colleague agencies in Southern California have begun to implement. I think it's 4 different counties in Southern California and in the LA area, and they are trying to unify. I was just talking about a one call, one click for Contra Costa County, but they're trying to use a platform and implement it elsewhere in the state. And so Tom Tamara and his organization are taking a look at that system to see if it's a good fit for their organization. For those that don't know, Contra Costa Crisis Center, it does operate as an information referral service. They have phone banks. They have, it's a sophisticated operation. So that organization scaling up to do a one call, one click would not be, as nearly as big a lift as starting it up from scratch. like I said, they have the expertise, they have the infrastructure, and it's scalable, I think, is the most important thing. Anyway, subsequent to that meeting, the Richmond Senior Services Commission meeting, the ATS team met with Tom and we went over the system in a little bit more detail. There's interest from the team, there's interest from Tom, and potentially some sort of collaboration moving ahead. But that's going to take more conversations, and we'll probably bring something, a presentation in more detail to this group if we do proceed with those conversations. So that is all I had on the one call, one click. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Okay. So thank you, Sophia, for putting the slide up and for taking it down. Thank you. Okay, are there any representatives who have questions or comments? I see Representative or Committee Member Hudson raising his.
Yeah, I'm
real
sorry, I don't
hand.
have my raise the hand here thing.
Okay.
And
then
I'm really
followed by-
not trying to put people on the spot, but I want to move this thing a little bit quicker. When I read this, I see this is a one-seat ride pilot program, and we're going to give an update. I mean, if I had to go back to people and I got to give a report to the mayor's conference or something like that, I mean, can I cut through everything we just heard and said, yeah, we're doing a pilot program, and in November, we're going to vote to make it permanent. Something like that. I mean, what's the update is what I'm looking for, John. Are we looking at, we're getting results and it's favorable and we all want to do this, or where are we on this thing? Something more that the average, I don't know, a darn thing wants to hear.
Maybe since you brought up one seat ride, and correct me if I'm wrong, Naomi, at a staff level, and this will come up later in the agenda, we are looking to make some adjustments to the meeting schedule. We had a meeting planned for August on the schedule. We think if we can probably cancel that meeting, if we can schedule a meeting in July, and in July, we would like to bring you a recommendation for the one seat ride project.
Okay, that's good enough for me, Peter. That's an update that tells me, okay, I can tell people we're moving at this speed. Thank you.
And then just to let you know, you're going to hear a bigger presentation about the fare subsidy program. We'd like to bring a recommendation to you at your June meeting for that. So we're trying to move these things.
Good. I just, you know what, everybody here that has to give a report knows what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, I got to say more than, yeah, we heard a bunch of things. Sounds good, but I mean, I got a bridge I've been trying to build for 30 years, so right outside my door, and we're getting close, aren't we, Peter?
He's nodding his head.
As far as I know,
There we
if I were in the office, I could go down to the projects folks and ask them.
Okay.
But
So thank you for that question and for that timeline.
Oh, what's his name?
Committee Member Xavier and then Committee Member Anderson.
Yes, you state that East Bay Fair Transit got involved in your last meeting. Was there any discussion on them for future purposes, like one seat, one ride, getting people from West County to other parts of the county, of them dropping their requirements, their qualification requirements for people to use East Bay Paratransit? I don't qualify because I can walk a few feet. That's my question.
yeah, it's a great question. You know, there are some issues we still need to work out, and that's one of them with East Bay Paratransit, is just finding a way that they can expand their services above and beyond ADA, which this could potentially be, you know, without compromising their whole system and the costs associated with that. So we're still working on those. I think a pilot will give us an opportunity to do something that's not a permanent thing at this point, but let's see what happens and how it goes. Charlie has his hand up, and he might have more information just based on his conversation with Nelson Nygaard with regard to maybe how it can be handled without really affecting East Bay Paratransit, if it's a alternative service that started and doesn't involve the use of East Bay Paratransit. But I know it's not a perfect answer, Rita, but those are the conversations we still need to kind of work through in establishing this pilot and getting it ready to go. And that's one of the reasons that we probably can't bring a recommendation back in June. It'll have to be a month after that.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thank you. And Task Force Member Anderson, Charlie, welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I just wanted to, for all of those reporting back, wanted to inject a note of caution. Right now, the one-seat ride is possible because of a contract that County Connection has with their paratransit provider, and they are currently out to bid. They have not awarded a contract. It is a joint effort that they're engaged in with Livermore Amador Valley Transit. And it's unclear yet what the award is going to look like and who's going to get the contract and what the capacity of the provider is going to be to continue the type of arrangement that is in place now that is enabling the one-seat ride to, succeed. So I think, there are a number of these technical issues to figure out what capacity a provider has to deliver the services. And I think we're all interested in finding a solution to it. But before we get too enthusiastic about bringing a positive report back in June, I just want to let people know that there are things in flux right now. On another note, I have a question about the one call, one click service. I know that the CCTA has grant funds for a mobility as a service type of grant for fixed route. And I'm just curious, before there are, this sort of bifurcated one call, one click information systems, is there any ability or research going on or anything about somehow coordinating a single point of contact for all services, and then the provider or the system can sort out how to provide the information and how to set up rides if that is part of the ultimate solution?
Okay, thank you, Peter or John.
Good question. I guess I'll
And
can
then
answer briefly on the technical part, then hopefully Peter will chime in on the on CCTA operations. But we discussed that early on in the ATS plan and probably throughout the conduct. And that what we discussed was exactly what you're talking about, Charlie, which is the overlap between these different types of operations. A paratransit brokerage, MOS system. The Venn diagram is closer to a circle than it is separate circles. So anyway, but hopefully Peter can provide more detail.
Well, just specific to the MOS, Charlie, it's so right now the current pilot that's funded or demonstration is strictly for the Interstate 680 corridor, and an app that may not be ideal when it comes to this particular population. Although that's not to say that the door isn't always open to have some integration in the future. If the MOS continues beyond its first phase, finds additional funding and continues that way, it certainly would make sense, to have some connection there so that folks can kind of just use the one system.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Dave Hudson and then Debbie.
I don't know how to say this other than say it. Thank you, Director Anderson. That's what I have been looking for. If there's even a doubt that the one seat is in flux, I can tell you at County Connection, and I'm pretty sure at LAFTA also, we want this. We want to make it succeed. We want to have, so it gives me an opportunity to turn around as an advocate, even though from this position to say, hey, look, if there's a problem with this thing, LAFTA, whoever that, let's sit down right now. Oddly enough, I told you I'd missed something, Teresa, because I was on email. Well, that email's with Bill Churchill. So guess who's getting an email as soon as I get off my soapbox here. But thank you, Director Anderson. That's what I'm looking for. Is there any kind of a stall, delay, whatever, that maybe we need to get on the horn and say, you know what, we don't want to stall. And between now and June or July, that's what I intend to do. And I know Robert Storr out of ONS feels the same way. I think Rashida's kind of iffy on whether or not that's a joke. Rashida wants us more than anybody. But I mean, this is when we have to do our job. And thank you for bringing that up. If anybody else feels it, speak now.
Thank you. Okay, Debbie Toth.
Thank you. So I will say that I echo Rita's concern, and I want to lift it up even further that it's even more glaringly an equity issue in West Contra Costa County to not have that participation. And if we are not doing everything we possibly can to get East Bay Paratransit on board with this, then we're not doing our jobs. And I'll speak for myself, but I think, I think it's incumbent on all of us, if we want to see an accessible strategic plan implemented, that all players that serve the people in this county need to be involved. I don't think you can discriminate against West County, and that's essentially what's happening by East Bay Paratransit not being involved. It's discrimination. And I think we need to call it what it is. I also want to comment on the one-click concept. I think the state is battling this right now with aging and disability resource centers and how people come into services for people with disabilities and elders in one stop. So I think we have some lessons learned and some information to gather from there. So not always this coordination of different entities and systems need to come from transportation. We can look to other models too. So I just think that there may be some learning opportunities for us in that, because it will be complicated. And I think that we can all acknowledge that we don't know how to do this, but we do know that that's what we want our outcome to be. And so it might be messy, and that's okay. I think the commitment to do it and to have the right outcome and to be iterative in our process and comprehensive in the way that we approach it is fine and part of this. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. So are there any other task force members who have questions or comments? Okay, Caitlin, have we received any written public comment on this?
We have
item?
not. Thank you for checking, Vice Chair. We have not received any written public comment.
Thank you. And if there are any members, any members of the public who would like to speak, please raise your hand, real or virtual. And I do see Joanna Pollock.
Great, thank you. Debbie, thank you for including West County in your concerns. And I do hear it. I think the meeting John Cunningham was referring to was the West County Senior Coalition meeting that was held last March. Ooh, I don't even remember. And Myrtle Braxton has been a voice that continuously reminds us that in West County, we haven't been getting the one seat, one ride from East Bay Paratransit. Unless that happens, it's not a county-wide program. It's a central, east, and a little portion of West County. So I'm just gonna, as a West County staff person representing transportation for senior and disabled, highlight that this is probably very expensive. And Debbie, again, it's the wish list we're trying to come up with here. And yes, it will be a little messy, and there will be things that we think we can do and things that we can't do, but we wished we could, or we might have promised. So I'm just putting it out there that it's, a work in progress. It's exciting, and it can't happen soon enough, Mr. Hudson, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to comment on these items? Do you see anyone else? Caitlin, I do not.
I do not as well.
Okay, well, with that, we will say thank you very much to Peter and Naomi and John for the work, and thank you for the question, Dave, about the timeline so that we know items that are going to be coming back to us and have a good idea of when these items will come back. So thank you. We will now move on to, before we move on, I didn't acknowledge that Supervisor Glover had joined us. And so I just wanted to acknowledge and recognize that Supervisor Glover is in attendance. I want to move on to agenda item 4C, and this will be Naomi again giving us an update on fare subsidies strategy. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So we attached a memo in your packet about our research on fare subsidies and some ideas. And so I'm just going to go over a few items from that memo, and then we welcome discussion. So some of our key takeaways was that when we look at these different types of programs, the program eligibility requirements vary quite a bit on the programs that they use as verification, such as area median income, federal poverty level, and housing and urban development. And this is a bit challenging if we are looking for consistency between programs. We might have to prioritize what we want to be consistent with, and also it might also impact which sources of funding we can tap in the future for these programs moving forward. The application processes also vary widely. There are paper applications and phone applications, and we didn't see a lot of online applications. So Clipper Start, I believe, is a good example. But obviously, looking forward to any pilot we do, we would want to have a variety of ways for people to apply to try and remove barriers there as much as possible. Fare payment structure. So these are, depending on the mode, how that transportation is usually paid for, and then how it is subsidized if it is. So they could be online accounts. Some programs use debit cards like taxis, and then some programs have vouchers that cover a certain portion of a ride. Like for instance, but then sometimes the user has to pay for a portion of it. For instance, a rider might pay $4 for a voucher that is worth $14 on a taxi. And then they give the driver that voucher plus anything above that $14 trip. So there's a whole range that can be done. We agreed that we want to investigate the possibility to subsidize multiple modes, maybe not all in the same program all at once, but we don't just want to be subsidizing ADA paratransit trips or just Lyft or taxi trips. You know, we want to be able to subsidize for people who need the assistance any type of transportation that they might need to get to what they need to do. So that requires a little bit of creativity. And then in terms of funding sources, the programs that we've researched receive funding from a combination of sources, but sales tax funding appears to be the most common of the programs that we researched. Okay, next slide. So we researched a whole bunch of case studies. We've looked at the taxi subsidy programs that already exist, such as in Solano County, and they use a debit card. And SFMTA already had a debit card program for their paratransit related taxis, but they have also been doing the essential trip card during the pandemic, which is focused on the riders who were already using their taxi program, but who are also low income, because that was in an effort to make up for some of the transit that had been discontinued. There are a number of TNC subsidy programs that have started up in the last few years, a number of them next door in Alameda County, and some existing in the county, in Contra Costa County already, using various concierge programs, or sometimes a coupon code for people to use using the app. And then there are transit. So we know that there are transit fare subsidy for low-income people through Clipper Start. But there are not very many transit subsidy programs that apply to ADA paratransit, interestingly enough. I think there's a variety of reasons for that, but we were able to find a couple with Sam Trans and in Marin as well. So then moving forward. So we also thought, okay, if we are going to look at pilots for multiple modes, we need to understand, for instance, for our ADA programs that are in the county already, how are those fares being paid, like in a very logistical operation sense, because these are the questions we have to answer if we're going to actually implement a program. So just as a matter of interest, so East Bay Paratransit takes fares via cash and tickets, and the tickets can be bought in person, through the mail, or by calling on the phone, and then they get mailed. And they are testing an app for a smartphone at this time, so that people would put funding into basically an account, and then they could use the app when they took the trip to draw down from that account to pay for that trip. And last I heard, that app might start to get tested. I was involved in the beta testing, but they might start to get start operating it about midsummer. So WestCat accepts cash, and they also accept tickets. They have an option to order those ticket sheets online, and they can also be bought in person or through the mail. Tri-Delta Transit also accepts cash, of course. Tickets, it appears that those tickets can also be ordered online, or bought in person, or by calling on the phone. And Link for County Connection has cash. They also have an advanced fare payment system where people can set up funding ahead of time, a minimum of $50, and then they can draw down on that fund from their trips. So as I said, these are all sort of the logistics we're looking at when we think about, okay, how could the fare subsidy program actually be implemented? Because we would need to think about how we would actually get the fares to the people when they need them. So then some of our potential funding sources are Measure X, of course, and also maybe the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG. I see that somebody from Tri-Delta Transit, Steve, has his hand up, and I wanted to know maybe if there's a clarification if I made a mistake.
Okay, Steve.
Yes, at Tri-Delta Transit, we have a TNC program here that's for our seniors and disabled, and ADA paratransit. Also, we also offer mobile ticketing for our ADA and non-ADA passenger seniors also.
Okay, great. So we may contact you to get more information about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So we just have some very high level draft recommendations. We need to determine an appropriate eligibility criteria. As we noted, there's different ones available. The ones that apply, say, for instance, to CDBG funding are more likely tied to the housing and urban development criteria, whereas Clipper Start, I believe, is using AMI. Alejo, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we've been thinking about these things because, you know, of course, we would like to be consistent as much as we can with the region, but that may not be feasible if we need to tap into the CDBG funding. So we're interested in any input or ideas that people have about that. And we would like to suggest, or as we said, we're going to firm up our recommendations for pilots and come back to you in the very near future. But we were looking at introducing an ADA paratransit pilot program in a subregion where that does not currently exist right now. And then also a pilot concierge program for TNC or Lyft Uber trips, again, in a subregion where maybe that doesn't exist or doesn't cover the whole subregion currently. So those are just sort of our very high level recommendations right now. So I would welcome any input or questions now at this time.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. And thank you, Steve, for pointing out the additional services that TriDelta has. Are there any task force members who have questions or comments on fare subsidies and the presentation that Naomi just provided? I don't see hands, virtual or real. Do we receive any written public comment, Caitlin, on this item?
We did not. Thank you for confirming.
And are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item or comment on this item at this time? Please raise your hand and we will call on you. Don't see any hands raised. Caitlin, do you see any hands raised?
I also do not see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So Naomi, thank you again for the report. And my understanding, just to clarify, is that we will be coming back with recommendations at our June meeting.
That is our plan.
Okay.
Is that right, Peter and John? We discussed that. So.
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed. We wanted to get comments and feedback from you all today to see if there was something that was really important that stood out that we needed to try and incorporate into the recommendations for particular plans. So not hearing any, I guess we can just put something, I shouldn't say that. That's kind of flippant. We'll put together a good program for the county and bring it back to you in June.
Okay, great. And so thank you again. And we will move on to, and of course, if you have any task force members have comments in between, you can send them off to staff. So if your thoughts get going after the meeting. So we will now move on to agenda item 4D, which is an update on outreach and engagement. And we will turn it back over to John Cunningham.
Hello, thanks again. Update the most recent outreach that we've done on the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan was at the West County Senior Coalition. I mentioned that earlier, but I erroneously called it the Richmond Senior Coalition. So it was the West County Senior Coalition where we presented the ATS plan, collected feedback. And then I did want to mention that Peter and I are also available to provide updates to your councils and agencies on the ATS plan. So just get a hold of either Peter or I, and we're happy to do that. I do want to update the group on, I guess, related goings on, not exactly outreach, but the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is conducting a survey right now, and that survey is focused on transportation issues for older folks, residents with disabilities, and low income as well. I was prepared to post the link in the chat, but I realize that I see now that our chat is disabled, so I think we can send out a follow-up email with a link to that survey that obviously folks could respond to the survey themselves, but also broadcasting it on your various agencies, social media feeds would be helpful as well. Also, next week, there is a West County Mobility Management meeting. Joanna Pollock is the staff person to that. And any questions, or if you want to get an agenda, you can get that from Joanna as well. I'm not sure if there's a web resource that we can include in the follow-up email, but I'll work with Joanna on that to try and get that information broadcasted out. And then in addition to that, there's a lot going on right now. There is a regional paratransit coordinating council meeting. It's a workshop, I believe, in June. And I think, I don't want to highlight her, erroneously, but Naomi Armenta, are you the contact person for that, or do you have detailed information on that workshop?
Well, in Richard's absence, I'm probably the best contact person, unless anyone knows Drennan directly. But yes, it is sponsored by the MTC and the San Mateo Paratransit Coordinating Council. Those of you who've been around for a long time may have been to one of the earlier ones sponsored by the San Mateo Paratransit Coordinating Council. This one will be virtual, and we're really looking forward to it. We had a planning meeting, and pretty much there were representatives from all county PCCs. So we hope it will be a good opportunity to talk about regional issues. And the MTC is really interested in building up the capacity of the paratransit coordinating councils as advocacy bodies.
Quick question, Naomi, are these regularly held? I don't seem to recall announcements for these very often. And if they aren't, it seems like it would be an important one to attend, given that the accessible component of Seamless Bay Area, it's supposed to have a regional bent. So are they planning on talking about it this meeting?
I don't know if Seamless is a topic. The Blue Ribbon Action Plan items, I know are definitely a topic.
Okay.
So there are paratransit items in the Blue Ribbon Action Plan. And those include, for instance, one seat ride, and also appointing mobility managers for every county, looking at more uniform certification for ADA programs. So a whole range of interesting topics. As I said, I don't even remember. I know I went to San Carlos for the first regional PCC meeting. That was probably a decade ago. And then I don't remember the next one since then. The MTC has not had a lot of luck. I should say the staff at MTC has not had a lot of luck getting the MTC to commit to hosting these regularly, but maybe that will change. So as I said, it's kind of taken some initiative from a singular PCC to get it going. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Naomi and John, so you can share the link or more information with the task force. Okay, thank you. Debbie, welcome.
There were a couple things. I started with just one, and then you guys kept talking, and then I kept adding more to my list. So sorry. The first thing was, I as John said, there's a lot going on, and I don't want folks to get confused, but there are some really fantastic opportunities right now. So John mentioned this MTC survey that's going on right now around transportation barriers, and they are specifically wanting to seek input from people with disabilities and elders. Electronically is really not the best way to collect it from the frail older adults who probably use paratransit. I'm not saying that not all of them, I don't want to generalize because that's not true, but that's not the best way. So I just think that the more that we can do to make that available, maybe on paratransit vehicles. I don't know if it's possible to print those surveys out. I just was thinking, there's a way that we could do better to make sure that we get that feedback. At the same time, there is another study going on out of UC Davis that is looking to gather information from people that's more of a statewide net to try and gather what are the barriers to people in transportation and getting around. I shared it with the DACLAC subcommittee, John. I don't know if you can include that link with when you send out whatever you're going to send out to this group, but I would appreciate it if you included that. Because I think we want to fill as many places and spaces with this information as we can so that we do better. And I think my final comment question was on the regional PCC thing that was elevated. I've never heard of it. I'm excited at the thought of it. I wonder if there is or can be some focus on the structure of PCCs. If the point is for our regional body, MTC, to lift up and build the infrastructure and ability of PCCs to operate and navigate and advocate, it would be interesting to see how they're structured. Ours is I don't know the birth of the PCC, and the current structure is about 50% transit providers and 50% other representation. I'm curious to see what the makeup of the other PCCs are and where that comes from. I don't know. So it's a good thing for us to get educated about and learn. And thank you for bringing that opportunity to this group.
Peter.
Can you hear the dogs in the background?
Yes.
Okay, well then I will just save my
And
comment
you.
for later.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry, it
We'll come
just
back.
happened.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Are there any other members of the task force who have comments or questions? Okay, do we receive any written public comment, Caitlin?
You did not. Thank you.
And are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item? Please raise your hand and we will call on you. I don't see any hands raised, and so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is also going to bring back John Cunningham with an update on the Measure X funding.
Thanks again, and this will be my briefest update, and I don't have any change from the last time we met, and that is that County Council is really scrambling to work to get the money out the door, agreements, criteria, that sort of thing. So I've had a number of meetings with County Council on that, and so they are plugging away, and we're getting everything set up to get it out the door to CCTA, like I said. Happy to try and answer any questions though.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any members of the task force who have any questions or comments on that very brief but thorough report? And not seeing any hands raised. Did we receive any written public comment, Caitlin?
We did not. Thank you.
And are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item? I don't see any hands raised. So thank you, John, and thank you for continuing to work to move that forward. We will now move on to agenda item number 5. And this is under correspondence and communications. And as Peter touched on earlier, we would like to propose that staff is proposing that we move up the August meeting to July 21st. At 2 p.m. to approximately 3:30. And so we would have 2 meetings back to back rather than every other. Anyway, June, July, and August is usually dark for CCTA and the other transportation entities. And so if folks could look at their cameras and basically sort of by consensus and general nodding, let staff know if that will work. I see some thumbs going up.
Can we
Thank
double our
you.
stipend?
Yes. Yes. Well, no, we would have to bring that back to a meeting to agendize that, Representative Hudson.
We can
but-
triple our stipend.
Yes. But it's not an item on the agenda. No, everyone, just for the record, there is no stipend. So I think staff, do you have enough direction to schedule those meetings?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any correspondence. Do any task members have any communications or items that are within the purview basically of our group? Rita, Rita.
I just wanted to state about the West County Senior Coalition meeting that John Cunningham and Debbie and a bunch of people were at. Because I was on Zoom, there were 60 people in attendance. Normally, back before COVID, West County Senior Coalition would be in County Supervisor John Joya's office in the conference room, maybe 8 or 10 of us at best. So this was 60 people, and I'm still impressed thinking of that number.
Great, thank you. One of the benefits, the increased accessibility and opportunity for the public to participate and so thank you for bringing that up. Debbie Toth?
And the whole topic of that senior coalition was about accessible transportation. So another reason, people are beginning to show up. I think John Cunningham and I were banging our heads against walls in 2003 that we couldn't get people to show up for these things. And now it's a very different story. I wonder if there is and maybe you've sent it and I'm sorry if you have and I've missed it, but sort of a draft budget for how we anticipate that we are going to be spending our $1.4 million that we're getting from Measure X, and how much Measure J money is going to be included in not just paying for a consultant, but actually in the work that we're going to be implementing related to the strategic plan. So I think it's important that we don't just have you guys come to us, on a monthly basis and say, we'd like to spend X. Can we have your permission? Like, what's the plan? So I don't know if you've sent that to us already. I apologize. I didn't see it.
So I'm looking at John, but I know that there was a general, but I believe that this would be a perfect future agenda item to come back to us. And John, did you want to comment?
Yep. Thank you. That's basically what I was going to say. We can bring back something more detailed at a future meeting. Due to the timing of the Measure X funding available, we did not have adequate time to put together detailed budget expenditure plans for each one of these initiatives. It was a bit of a scramble. So what we turned in was a very coarse budget. As each one of these initiatives moves forward, we'll provide a more detailed budget. And yes, my understanding is that that budget will come to this committee and then to the CCTA board as details develop. We're sort of building this thing as we're flying it. So more details to follow.
Okay. So are there any other, and hold on, Joanna, are there any other task force members who have something that they would like to communicate out? And Joanna, this isn't usually a public comment place, but I'm going to invite you to please make your comment and welcome you to make your comment.
Thank you. And maybe it isn't really the place. I'm highlighting what Rita said, 60 participants in West County is phenomenal. It is becoming evident, maybe COVID, maybe a whole bunch of factors that not just West County, but all of the services that seniors and disabled depend on are really critical. And I think that's kind of a, whatever, it's a inflection point or it's reaching critical mass for sure in West County. And Debbie, it reminds me of when you leave a doctor's office and then you go, and by the way, whatever, I can't sleep at night and I have 102 temperature every night. And the doctor goes, oh, well, that's important. Yes, a budget is really, really important. And I look forward to hearing more about that, because we don't want to fritter away the money just by having great ideas and doing case studies and so forth. So I'm sure that's not the point of this group. I'm looking forward to that too, the budget, and West County tips our hat to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that if we can pull down the time, I think that actually that was a perfect, comment and a perfect way to, unless there's additional comment, to adjourn. After I say this is the perfect way to adjourn the meeting, and then ask you if you want to say something else. But I think the comment that the participation is for a number of reasons, but primarily and most important to us all assembled here is the needs and the services, and also the need to, as Debbie reminds us regularly, to be able to implement plans and studies that have been done in the past. And so with that, I don't see any other hands raised. We will adjourn our meeting to our June meeting. And of course, right now I don't have it in front of me, but it's the third
June
Thursday.
16th.
Thank you. And the third Thursday, June 16th. So thank you all very much for being here today. And we will see you, if not before then, on June 16th. And we are adjourned.